Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Corporal William Ernest Verdon. William Verdon, known as Willie or Bill, was born in 1892 to Stephen and Bridget Verdon of Victoria. His mother owned a greengrocer's in Meeboo North for 30 years and was considered the mother of the town. She was William's sole parent from the age of about 8, and his father was an alcoholic who left the family. Verdon was educated at the local state school in Meeboo North and went into the railways after finishing his education. Nearly all of his siblings left the district as they grew up, but remained close, with Willie going to Donald in the northwest of Victoria to work. William Verdon enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force with one of his closest friends, Ben Esposito, in January 1915. The two remained together for the rest of their military career. After training in Australia, they left for active service overseas with the 21st Battalion in May 1915. After further training in Egypt, they were sent to Gallipoli in late August. While en route to Gallipoli, the troop ship that Verdon and Esposito were on, the Southland, was torpedoed near the island of Lemnos. Verdon later wrote, "I was standing looking over the railing into the sea, watching the small islands as we passed them. I heard a crash and felt the jar of the ship as it came to a dead stop. It was not very long before help hove into sight in the shape of a steamer coming for all it was worth to save us. I can tell you it was a very pleasant sight as we had been in the water a couple of hours." Verdon arrived at Anzac Cove on the 7th of September after the major offensives of the campaign had ended. After leaving Gallipoli, the 21st Battalion returned to Egypt, where the AIF underwent a period of expansion and reorganisation. From there, the battalion was sent to France in March 1916. It became the first Australian battalion to commence active operations on the Western Front a month later, when it made a few small-scale raids on the German lines near Armentières. A few weeks later, the battalion was sent to the Somme region to support Australian operations around the French village of Pozières. As the men provided working and carrying parties to the front line, they regularly came under heavy shell fire. Verdon was sent forward with a working party and, after a night dealing with a large group of Germans in a dugout, he saw another party moving around in the early hours. He later recalled, "I waved to them to come over to us. I thought they might surrender. Sure enough, some of them put up their hands. I was very pleased with myself, thinking I was going to bag about a dozen Germans. You can imagine my disappointment when they started to wave me to go over to them. They thought I wanted to surrender." After a few weeks fighting, Verdon and his mate had proven able soldiers. Verdon wrote home to say, "Ben Esposito, my mate, had received a military medal. I was also mentioned in dispatches, but I don't know what for. In fact, it was for consistent gallantry in action both in the line of Fleur Bay and also during operations on the Somme. By October, he had been promoted to corporal." By December, the fighting on the Western Front had slowed as a bitterly cold winter closed in. Australian divisions rotated in and out of the front line to provide basic defence, but were not called on to conduct major operations. However, the front was still a very dangerous place to be. On the 22nd of December 1916, Verdon went to see some of his friends in the machine gun section. Rather than wind his way through the communication trenches, he chose to go over the top. The gunners called to him to get into the trench, but he was shot by German soldiers just a few metres away. Ben Esposito, who saw it happen, later recalled he died without a murmur. Ben Esposito was distraught at the loss of his best mate. He asked a friend to convey his sympathy to Will's mother, saying he could not bear to write as he was much too upset. Much later, Ben wrote to a friend, "It is hard to write about Bill. I can't realise it myself. My old pal gone, my proudest thought is that Bill called me friend." Corporal Verdon's body lay out in the open for a week, it being too dangerous to retrieve it. Despite the danger, Ben Esposito and another good mate, Bruce Taylor, volunteered several times to go out and get his body so they could bury him. In the end, their officers reluctantly agreed. The pair went back to the front line, carrying a heavy wooden cross over 7 miles of broken ground. Finding Verdon's body just 20 metres from a German trench, they buried him with their hands to avoid attracting fire. Just as they finished, a shell landed nearby, blowing Ben several feet in the air and knocking Bruce's hat off. Both made it back safely, satisfied they had done the right thing by their mate. After the war, Verdon's grave was moved, and today he lies in Bangor British Cemetery under the simple inscription, RIP. William Verdon was 24 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal William Ernest Verdon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.